When 7 large and beautiful whales became stranded on a beach in Buenos Aires in Argentina, rescuers and volunteers had to work fast to save their lives and get them back out to sea. But what happened next will melt your heart and leave you with a restored faith in human kindness and in animal intelligence. As the sun rose over the beautiful beaches of Buenos Aires, all was quiet. The sky was clear and blue. The air was already warming up, preparing for another beautiful day in the stunning Argentinian city. People were waking up and heading towards the beaches for a day of soaking up the sun and swimming in the sea, but little did they know what awaited them when they arrived. Washed up on the shore was a pod of killer whales. 7 were in total, from younger orcas to large, powerful, fully grown whales. Their black and white bodies glistened in the sun as they lay in the sand with the waves lapping at them. It would have been quite a magnificent sight had they meant to be there. But the unfortunate truth was that the whales had beached and were stranded on the shore. They lay still to preserve energy and prolong their life. Killer whales belong in the water. It is their natural environment, and any prolonged period out of their element could damage them to the point of no survival. When the people of Buenos Aires noticed the poor part of beached killer whales, they had a choice. Should they help them or leave those terrifying predators to their fate? Killer whales are known for being aggressive and powerful, and people are often warned to watch out for these giants when they swim in the sea. They could very easily kill a human if they wanted to. Coast guards usually tell people that if killer whales are in the area, swimming or surfing are prohibited because of the danger they pose to humans. So seeing killer whales washed up onto the shore was actually quite a frightening experience for some people. Still, as scary and intimidating as they were also stranded and had no way of making their way back into the sea. It would take human intervention to keep them alive and hopefully get them back to the safety of the open waters. But would anyone help? Would anyone be brave and kind enough to help these killer whales in distress? Thankfully, news of the beached orcas had gotten to a local wildlife rescue center, and the dispatchers immediately sent rescuers to the scene to help. The rescuers splashed the whales with seawater and covered them with wet towels to keep their skin moist and protected from sunburns. For several hours, they only tried to keep them comfortable, and a large crowd started to gather around. Soon, it became evident that the rescuers alone couldn't save all 7 whales. They needed help. Luckily, people began to volunteer. They waded into the shallow water and helped as much as possible. They began splashing water, digging channels, calming the whales, and doing anything and everything they could to keep these magnificent beasts alive. More and more volunteers came, suddenly seeing that killer whales weren't as terrifying and monstrous as they had initially believed. And all day long, the ever-growing team worked together to keep the whales alive and come up with a plan to save them. Why would the killer whales have intentionally beached themselves, though? Well, there are a variety of reasons why this would happen. If a single whale had been found beached, its situation could have been reduced to sickness or injury. Animals know when they're not well and probably going to die. This is the way some whales choose to go out, by beaching themselves and essentially suffocating to death once they are out of the water. Still, in doing so, they prevent other whales from also becoming sick or injured. Other reasons that beachings occur include whales getting washed up in bad weather when the tides are extra strong, and old age is a factor too. They might make navigation errors resulting in them swimming up the beach instead of away from it. But a reason why an entire pod of whales washed up on the shore is a little more tricky to pin down. The best guess of the people present on the Buenos Aires beach that day was that the pod was hunting too close to the shore and had inadvertently ended up beaching themselves. None of the whales were old, the weather was fine and clear, so a hunting trip gone wrong was the only logical explanation. As the day went on, rescuers and volunteers slaved away in the sun to keep them alive. By mid-afternoon, the temperatures were soaring, and there was a strong chance that the whales would die of heat stroke. It was crucial that they were kept as covered up and wet as possible. At that moment, that was possibly more important than freeing them. Dedicated teams were assigned to each orca that kept the water flowing and their skin soaked. Other people started to dig channels underneath the killer whales, careful not to nick or cut them as they dug. They hoped that the seawater would get underneath their wet bodies and help them glide off the beaches and out to sea. Unfortunately, though, as the hours went on, the whales seemed to be getting tired and stressed. That alone could kill them. But the people had one final idea. One last-ditch attempt at saving the pod of 7 killer whales. The evening was drawing in. The tide was starting to come in, and the waves were getting larger. If they pushed at the whales, they would hopefully be able to move them off the beach. It was a simple idea that could very well fail, but they had to try. And as one of the large group of people started to push with all their might, everyone continued pushing the whales out to sea as the waves crashed in. The tide was working against them, pushing the orcas back onto the beach, but they didn't give up. They kept pushing until the whales' bodies started to shift towards the open waters. More people from the crowd joined to help, with the big final push, with each orca having tens of people helping guide it away from the beach. One by one, the whales must have sensed that they were starting to become free, and they began to power their tails up and down, providing a significant boost to the people pushing them out to sea. The waves crashed in and over both animals and humans, but no one stopped pushing. Everyone was doing their best to save the pod. Finally, with one huge final effort, the whales began to easily slip free of the beach and into the deeper waters beyond the shore. They were free. The orcas went up to each other as if greeting one another and checking that everyone was okay before starting to swim away. It had been an extremely long, tiring, and stressful day for the whales, as well as the humans, but it was finally over and they were free. The pod of killer whales swam out towards the open waters, with their fins poking above the surface of the waves. The rescuers, volunteers, and large crowd that had gathered all cheered and clapped as they watched the beautiful animals swim off toward the sunset, many of them with tears in their eyes. It was a beautiful moment and a breathtaking treat at the end of a long, hard day of keeping the orcas alive. But the best was yet to come. As the sun dipped below the horizon and the sky turned red, the killer whales started to leap out of the water in huge arcs, landing with a splash over and over again, as if they were putting on some kind of display for the people who had worked for many hours to save them. Perhaps it was their way of showing their gratitude. Whatever the case, it melted the hearts of those people silently watching. It was a stunning sight that brought those that weren't already crying to tears and confirmed that they had done the right thing. They had saved 7 lives that day, and for that, the killer whales would be forever grateful. So now, it's over to you. What did you think of this incredible and heart-melting story? Would you have helped out with the rescue of the killer whales? And how would you have reacted if you'd seen their display of gratitude afterward?